Well, hello there, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Two Sons Podcast. I am your co-host here, Philip, and in today's episode, we are going to be continuing our House of the Dragon series for season two as we dive in and talk about episode four. So, before we get into the episode properly, just want to make a couple of announcements and everything, and just kind of explain what's been going on. So obviously, the last episode that came out for you guys was my episode three breakdown and analysis of House of the Dragon season two, which was released, I believe, last week for you guys. So for those of you that have, listened to that on Spotify or watched that on YouTube, really appreciate your guys' love and support because that is honestly one of our highest viewed episodes to date. I think on YouTube it has like 102 views. So you guys really seem to enjoy it. And again, I really appreciate all the love and support that I am putting out on this mini series as I am really enjoying House of the Dragon myself. So it's nice to share that with you guys and then have it be reciprocated as well. So again, thank you guys so much for all the love and support. It really means a lot. Now, as for, the reasonings behind why me and my brother have not been able to get together since our last Acolyte review to do an episode, as we've said on this podcast many times before, that unfortunately, life happens. Excuse me. Life happens. We both get super busy. My brother just started a new job recently, and it's been very hectic and very busy for him. He is constantly like on call, unfortunately, because they are short-staffed. So he really does not have the time right now to dedicate, an hour or so to a podcast just in case he gets called in. So because of that, we are trying to figure out how to move forward. That doesn't mean that we're never going to put out another episode again. But until, both of our schedules kind of become somewhat normalized and a little routine, we are going to be putting out just a couple of solo episodes for the podcast, whether it's myself or my brother. Most likely you'll be hearing my voice every week, as fortunately I have, more time than my brother to put out a couple of episodes for you guys. So most likely I'm going to continue my House of the Dragon recap and analysis because at the time of this recording, this upcoming Sunday will be episode seven, and I'm only talking about episode four now. So there are a couple of episodes that I have yet to cover or covered. So I will be putting some episodes out on that and trying to catch up with that. There's also the finishing of our Acolyte breakdown analysis series. Obviously, the show finished up last week. I think it was last week, if not the week before. So we need to do a analysis and breakdown of just the last two episodes. So I'll talk to my brother about that, see if he'll be able to get in some time for the two of us to do that. But if not, then unfortunately I will probably be the one finishing out that series for us. But for now, I kind of just want to focus on House of the Dragon and everything, and make sure you guys have a couple of episodes to watch and listen to these next couple of weeks coming up. So I kind of have this plan today of putting out a couple of episodes, see what I could do, the best I can. So if you happen to see me in the same exact attire and dress in a couple of episodes, just know that I am probably recording all these episodes on the same day, but they will be released like on different weeks. But like I said, I'll see how I feel today and how much I can get through. But with that out of the way, and you guys just kind of in the loop and engaged again, we just want to thank you for all the love and support and patience that you offer us, as a small little podcasting platform. I know my brother really is missing out and he really wants to record, and he's stated how he really wants to eventually get together and come back to the podcast. But again, for now, like I said, we each got things going on in our lives right now. Again, that's just the way it is. We're not always going to be able to get together and record. So, we got to make do what we got, and hopefully you guys appreciate it. So before we get into today's episode, I'll briefly just go into how I'm doing. I'm doing okay. There's been a lot going on recently that I would like to keep private. So, I'm currently working through a couple of personal things, trying to do the best that I can. And like I said, it's just a little too personal right now to really talk about on the podcast and get in with you guys. Um, but again, just your love and support and appreciation for these videos always means a lot. And again, I really appreciate all you guys. But I'm doing okay. Slowly but surely, I think I'm making progress and I think I'm, heading into the right direction. Some days it might not feel like that, to be honest. But I think in the overall scheme, I think I'm doing pretty okay. As for my brother, unfortunately, I haven't spoken to him much, but like I said, I know he's been super busy with his job and work. I know that's been stressing him out and occupying a lot of his time. So that is pretty much what he's been doing as far as I could tell. Uh, my mother went home this last Saturday, so her vacation came to an end, but it was a lot of fun. We enjoyed spending some time with each other, and it was very nice seeing her and, like I said, being able to spend a couple of days with her. So, that is now officially came to an end. But yeah, I mean, other than that, like I said, I'm just ready to get into our episode for today. And yeah, without further ado, I think we will jump right into it. So, as I mentioned earlier, obviously I am a couple of episodes behind because at the time of this recording, this upcoming Sunday will be episode 7 of this season so far, and we are only talking about episode 4. And like I said, just because of some things that have been going on, really haven't had a chance, to record or really haven't felt that energy, to record and put out a good episode for you guys. Um, so like I said, I'm going to do the best that I can. And yeah, let's get right into it. So obviously we're going to be talking about episode 4 of House of the Dragon. So this was a highly anticipated episode coming out of the gate because for those of you that have read any of the novels and especially Fire and Blood, obviously you know what certain events were coming up, the way they were setting it up in these last 3 episodes. So obviously we had a huge event happen this episode known as the Battle of Rook's Rest, and we'll kind of cover that later in the episode as it obviously happened towards the end of the episode. But without further ado, we're just going to get into my ranking of the episode. So I think out of 10 suns, I think I would give it a solid 10 out of 10 suns, to be honest. I really enjoyed this episode. I know some people have been complaining about like the pacing, or the lack of action and like, kind of like, on the edge of your seat type of scenes, in this show. But I think what people need to realize is that Game of Thrones and in turn House of the Dragon, they're more like medieval fantasy soap operas, or at least that's how I would label them, to be honest. Um, in Game of Thrones, there wasn't that much action. It's not like you got action every single episode. And I think there are people, or at least what I've seen on, the internet and social media, is that there's like 2 camps. There's people that, just absolutely love this show and they look forward to it every single week. And there are those that are being real like book Nazi about it, in plain terms. And they are criticizing like everything that they're doing differently from the books and so on and so forth. And I think if people are in that camp or they're of that mindset, they need to realize that the books, so Fire and Blood and any of the books that have to deal with the Targaryen dynasty and family, they are meant to be seen more as like Westerosi textbooks. Like if we were in the world of Westeros and we were learning about the Targaryen dynasty, this would be a textbook that we would look at. These stories and accounts have been written by maesters far removed, whether they were actually there during the events of, these time periods that they cover, or they are like 3 generations removed and they're just writing from first and second hand accounts. Obviously, what is going on in the book is not going to be exactly accurate when it comes to what actually happened. And I think House of the Dragon so far is doing a good job of kind of putting their own spin on things and trying to tell the story of what actually happened, versus what it says in the book. Because, in all due respect, what is the sometimes, where's the fun of kind of predicting what's already going to happen? And if you're a fan of the book and you read Fire and Blood, then why would you tune in and sit here every week if you know exactly what's going to happen? I mean, it might be enjoyable to watch it unfold. I understand that, but I like when they put their own little spin and critique on it, and I don't think they're necessarily going out of their way and rewriting everything. I think they're doing a good job, putting their own spin on it when it counts, and I think people just need to try to develop that mindset, where the things that happen in the book aren't exactly firsthand accounts or what might have happened. So House of the Dragon is giving us that own personalized viewpoint of this is what actually happens because we're showing you in real time. But when you read Fire and Blood, it might show differently because these are being written by maesters that weren't even around, or this is like 100 years in the future, and they're writing down events that happened in the past. Just like any historical textbooks or findings in our real world, they're not always all firsthand accounts. They're like second or third hand accounts from monks or other historians that are just retelling the story through their eyes or what they heard from somebody else. So I think when people take that into consideration, I think it makes watching House of the Dragon a lot more enjoyable. But without getting too far off tangent, uh, we'll jump into the episode. So how I've been doing this episodes is that I've been splitting it into basically two parts where I've been covering, the events and what's been going on with Team Black, and then I've been doing the same thing with Team Green. Um, so I think we are going to start with Team Black, because usually we end up starting with Team Green, so I'll just change things up a little bit today. So Team Black, let's see, we have the Black Council, or Rhaenyra's small council, basically gathering on Dragonstone. Obviously Rhaenyra is still absent after the events of episode 3, where she went and infiltrated King's Landing, in order to try to speak with Alicent to possibly forge some path forward. Um, in order for peace, and to try to avoid any conflict that was brewing on the horizon. So obviously we see that that was unsuccessful, and we have yet to see her return. So in her absence, we have her son Jacaerys and his betrothed, and then also Daemon's daughter Baela, kind of holding down the fort for her. As the council bickers amongst themselves, and they are very like angsty and eager to go to war and to start conflict. Because the current standings, with the Dance of the Dragons, is that the Greens are massing a massive host. They have House Lannister sending forces from the Westerlands, and they also have a host from House Hightower marching from the Reach. And they are currently trying to mass in the Riverlands, basically. So we see that Team Green has been able to mobilize a land army, and unfortunately, Team Black has not been able to do that yet. The only armed forces that they currently have is the Velaryon fleet that is basically blockading the Gullet, and kind of patrolling the waters around King's Landing and Dragonstone. So the advantage, for the armed forces, should definitely go to Team Green, of this moment, because, as much as the Velaryon fleet is obviously, restricting King's Landing and putting a damper on, the situation there, the Greens being able to mass a force, to challenge Team Black in the Riverlands, is not good news. As, we see Daemon currently in Harrenhal trying to build a host of his own. And, obviously so far that is not going very well. So with that being said, we see that, her council is definitely very eager and a little on edge as to, what they want to do, and they are definitely pushing for action. And the only really course of action that they want to take is to use the dragons, because that is the tactical advantage they currently have. Obviously, Team Black has more dragons than Team Green, so they want to use their numerical advantage to their advantage, so to speak. And the council members are constantly calling for action, basically. So we see that because of this, we see that both Jacaerys and Baela are kind of giving a little bit of attitude and personality, to the council members, which is always appreciated. I mean, those actors, really knock their roles out of the park, making these characters come alive. And we see that there is like a little discontent with the council as of now. And because of that, Bela calls upon her grandmother, Rhaenys, to come to Dragonstone and take part in these council meetings to kind of like, let calmer and cooler heads prevail, basically. So, this is where we kind of pivot to, what Rhaenys is up to right now. So we see that she is, back in Velaryon territory. And, we see that she is actually looking for her husband, Corlys, obviously. And we see that before she's able to, find her husband, that she meets somebody by the name of Alan. His name is Alan Hull, and you know, she ends up recognizing him, by his like physical and distinct features, and surprisingly, she's quite pleasant with him. Now, like for those of you that don't know, Corlys Velaryon has two bastard sons, by the names of Alan and Adam Hull. So obviously they are bastards, which gives them the name Hull from the place that they are from, and they have not been raised up or recognized by House Velaryon, obviously. But obviously Rhaenys knows of their existence, and when she looks into like Alan's face, she recognizes Corlys immediately. And she kind of is a little sympathetic and and nice with Alan, as she says that your mother must have been very beautiful, as kind of a way saying that, wow, your mom must have been really beautiful for a young Corlys to basically cheat on me and and produce the two of you. And before she can kind of continue to talk to Alan any further, this is where we see Corlys reappear, and he sort of like dismisses Alan, and basically Rhaenys confronts Corlys, and is a little upset that she was not told that this was the sailor that basically plucked him from the sea, and basically saved his life. Obviously Corlys retaliates by saying that he didn't think it was very relevant, to where Rhaenys is being very cordial and polite, and is urging Corlys to raise Adam up as a Velaryon, and he should be given the highest honors and distinctions for his what he has done, which is very mature of her, especially because it must not be hard to know that the love of her life has other children out there besides her own. So this is very cordial and very political of Rhaenys. After a little brief discussion about Adam, Rhaenys informs Corlys that, I'm sorry, not Adam, Alan. Rhaenys informs Corlys that she's been summoned to Dragonstone by their granddaughter Baela, as Rhaenyra has not yet returned to Dragonstone, and the small council is basically tearing her and Jacaerys to shreds. In response, we see Corlys get a little frustrated as he's wondering where Rhaenyra went, and Rhaenys responds beautifully by basically telling him that she is probably out trying to stop this war or basically avoid bloodshed. So we do see that Rhaenys has always been a very strong supporter of Rhaenyra, and we see that echoed even further with her comments, to her husband, basically. So eventually we pan back over to Dragonstone, where Rhaenys has, obviously made landfall, and we see that the small council continues the bicker in the absence of Rhaenyra. But we see with Rhaenys present that there are a little bit more calmer and cooler heads, that are prevailing. And when things seem to be getting out of control, once again, that is where Corlys arrives, and we can definitely see how the patriarchy mindset in Westeros and just this universe in total is definitely taking effect, because we see that these lords are able to kind of calm down and quiet down when Corlys is speaking, and is kind of the voice of reason, um and at that moment, as that happens, excuse me as that happens, we also see the return of Rhaenyra with one of her Kingsguard. And obviously right away, we see that her son Jace is very upset. Obviously, he doesn't know where she's been or what she's been up to. So he's a little upset. So in response to that, Rhaenyra basically comes clean and tells everybody what she has been doing, and explains that she went to King's Landing to try to talk to Alicent to see if there was a way forward through peaceful talks and negotiations and not just conflict. Um, so obviously not everybody is exactly thrilled that she took this approach, but you know, in hindsight, she thought it was, necessary, and she wanted to make sure that there were no peaceful alternatives before she basically went full throttle on, violence and bloodshed, basically. So, now that that has been done, obviously, the small council tells her that Kristen Cole has been marching with a green host in the Crownlands, which is like, the area right outside of King's Landing, and basically, besieging and capturing fortresses that are loyal to Team Black, and basically building a really big host to eventually march into the Riverlands to secure Harrenhal. So we see that Kristen Cole is eventually on the march to a fortress and a location called Rook's Rest. And at first, a little people are a little, taken aback by this. They're wondering why Rook's Rest was chosen. As everybody knows that their target is Harrenhal, so they're wondering why he would just not march straight to Harrenhal and instead go to Rook's Rest. However, the council mentions that the Lord of Rook's Rest is currently one of Rhaenyra's council members. So, by taking, his fortress off the board, it's kind of a blow to Rhaenyra's small council as well. So there is some strategic value in taking this fortress. And with that being said, obviously, there needs to be action. There has to be action taken, basically, because they can't just let this go unanswered. And with that being said, Rhaenyra is finally obliged to allow some sort of violence or some sort of bloodshed. And they implore her to send a dragon. Because again, we talked about it before that obviously the blacks have a numerical advantage when it comes to dragons. So we see that after some hesitation, she doesn't really know who to send or what to send. Originally she wants to send herself, then like her son volunteers, and then finally Rhaenys steps up and says that you should send me. Obviously Meleys, Rhaenys' dragon is older and battle tested, so it is one of the largest dragons that they have, besides Caraxes, and is the best choice in order to go to Rook's Rest. So, you can see that everybody is a little like on edge, that they're a little tense. Obviously they don't exactly want to send Rhaenys, because she is, an important supporter of Rhaenyra, but eventually she obliges. And we get a nice scene of Rhaenys, meeting Meleys um, on Dragonstone and, comforting her and, telling her that, they're going back to battle. And we see her take off for Rook's Rest. So before we return to that, we're going to pivot real quick to over to Harrenhal and see what Daemon has been up to. So if memory serves me correctly, because I was trying to figure out what exactly was going on in Harrenhal this episode, we see that Daemon has another dream, and it's of Rhaenyra as her younger self, played by Millie Alec, on the Iron Throne. And obviously, she's speaking to him in High Valyrian. He's not exactly understanding because she's a little too far away. And eventually, when she gets close enough, she is basically saying that he's jealous and that he's upset because, your brother basically didn't trust you and, didn't love you enough to make you his heir. And that's why, like, he made me heir. And in retaliation, we see that Daemon actually strikes the head clean off of Rhaenyra's shoulders. But even though she was decapitated, her head is still talking to Daemon. And soon enough, we see that he wakes up. So we see that this was all a dream, basically. Excuse me, sorry. And we see that he is still suffering from these like hallucinations and dreams in Harrenhal, basically. Now, again, I was trying to figure out what exactly was going on in this episode. So I think they sent for envoys for House Tully. So currently the Lord of House Tully is a frail old man who is currently dying and bedridden. So in response, they send his grandson. I don't know if his name is. I think his name is maybe Oscar Tully. So obviously, he's just a child. And in response, Damon is a little impatient. He's a little rude, and he basically just tells Oscar, he's like, well, why don't you just be along the process and just murder your grandfather? So obviously, Oscar is a little taken back by this, and you could just show how desperate, Damon is to build up a host in the Riverlands, and how everything that's been going on with him at Harrenhal. Um, is just kind of messing with his mind and just, making him like, on edge and antsy and all that. So after, his brief meeting with Oscar Tully, we see that, he has, Sir Simon Strong, um, send for, I guess the current household leader of House Blackwood. I think his name is Wilhelm Blackwood, because he knows that obviously the Blackwoods are going to, favorably respond to him, as well as Queen Rhaenyra, and he could start building his host of men through this house. So we see that later on in the episode, after Damon continues to trip out a little bit. I think this might be the episode where he has more of a personal conversation with Alice, in the terms of like, she starts to confront him about like, why he's actually in Harrenhal, and a little bit of his past. And we see a little bit of like a, friendly relationship develop between the two of them. Um, and in response, we see her like give him something to help him sleep. And then, from that angle, it kind of pans out to him sitting at the table. Speaking with, Sir Simon Strong, as well as, Wilhelm Blackwood. So obviously, the Blackwoods, are eager and willing to support Queen Rhaenyra. The only thing that they ask of Daemon is, that they make House Bracken pay for their treachery. And what happened at, the Battle of the Burning Mill, which we saw in a previous episode. So, basically, House Blackwood is agreeing to, join Daemon and Rhaenyra if Daemon exacts some vengeance on House Bracken, which we see the beginnings of in, I believe, episode 5. So we will return back to, House Bracken and what's been going on with them in the next episode. But that's basically, all that happens for the rest of Harrenhal this episode, with Damon. So we see that he is continuing to dream. A lot of people have been speculating that this is kind of like, Damon's way of playing every crucial and important moment and important people in his life, um, through these dreams or visions, and trying to make some sort of amends or try to understand who he really is or what he really wants. Because obviously everybody knows, later in Fire and Blood, we have the battle above the God's Eye, which is going to involve Daemon and Caraxi, as well as Aemond and Vhagar. So some people are speculating that this is kind of like Daemon's way of like making amends and trying to like rewrite his past and like do things differently, or basically just like try to reconcile and become a better man, before, things escalate any further, basically. Which is a nice spin on it. I kind of like that. I mean, I know his character is a little different from the books, as he is in the show, but again, we discussed this a little bit earlier. I mean, obviously, the Maesters are going to paste him one way, and the show is trying to give him a little bit more of a personality, and develop his character a little bit more beyond what we get in the books. So I do appreciate it. I think Matt Smith is doing a phenomenal job with Damon, and it's definitely interesting to see such a proud and prolific warrior kind of slowly go mad in in Harrenhal. So I'm looking forward to seeing like what's going to happen the rest of the season with Damon in Harrenhal. Um, now now that Team Black is kind of under control, and we talked about them. we are going to move a little bit towards Team Green. We're going to discuss what's been going on with them. To be honest, there really isn't much going on with Team Green. We see, excuse me, we see that Team Green, opens up with their small council meeting, as they are reporting on the process of progress that Sir Kristen Cole has made, in the Crownlands, and Aegon is insisting that Kristen Cole march on Harrenhal because that is, the prime target for both, Team Green and Team Black. He's frustrated that Daemon is already there, and he doesn't want to give Daemon time to build a host to challenge the Greens. So he wants Kristen Cole to go there right away. In response, we see that Aemond is, telling the council and Aegon that Sir Kristen Cole is marching on to Rook's Rest as it is closer to Dragonstone and it will allow them to kind of cut off Dragonstone by land and then also take out a key member of her council as well by taking over the fortress. So Aegon is a little bit, in disbelief because of this, because he doesn't know that these plans are being made. So he kind of asks Aemon, how does he know this? And Aemon says that him and Cole have been corresponding. So we see that, Aegon is definitely being used more as like a public figure. They're not really adding him to any discussion, or debate on like, what to do, for their side of the faction, and all that. We see that Aegon gets a little upset about this, because he doesn't like how people are kind of corresponding behind his back. Now in retaliation, we have this really nice scene of both Aegon and Aemon speaking High Valyrian to each other, to kind of have a private conversation in a room full of people. Oh, excuse me. And we see that Aemon is obviously very fluent and educated in High Valyrian, as he's basically, not only making a mockery out of, his brother, but the small council as well. And is basically telling Aegon that he has more important things to deal with, and that he'll handle, the war and the effort, and he doesn't have to do anything. And in response, we have Aegon's like futile attempt to try to speak any High Valyrian, as he asks Aemon if he could make a war, basically. Which in return, like, Aemon kind of chuckles. So we see the disconnect, between these two brothers, where Aemon thinks that, he's the big shot and that he's the tactician and, he knows what to do. And then, his brother just kind of sits there and doesn't do anything or should just sit there and shut up, basically. Um, so we see after this, we see, Aegon eventually storm off, as we see him return to another small council meeting, and he's just sitting there, and eventually he slams his little ball down, and he just says that everybody bores him, and he walks out. So feeling frustrated and defeated, I guess he goes back to his chambers, where we actually run into, ooh, excuse me, where we run into his mother, Allison. Now, Allison, so far this episode, we open up with her in her own chambers, basically requesting some sort of potion from the Grand Maester on the small council. And basically, this is basically more of an abortion potion because obviously her and Kristen Cole have been sleeping together. And just like how we saw in season one with Rhaenyra, Allison doesn't want to obviously mother any children by Cole, so she wants to take something to prevent that. So we see that that is delivered to her and kind of like in secrecy, as she is going over some of the historical records and texts that her husband or her late husband Viserys used to have around King's Landing, as he was obsessed with the histories. We see her looking into the histories because of the conversation that her and Rhaenyra had at the end of episode 3, where she misinterpreted what Viserys said, and Viserys was actually talking about Aegon the Conqueror's dream and the prophecy, and was not talking about their son Aegon. So after hearing this, Alicent is going through the histories to probably try to educate herself, or maybe find some sort of loophole or something, to make herself basically feel a little bit better for doing what she's done. So, before, we see Aegon and Alicent interact, we actually see Lord Larys, who's been recently promoted to the Master of Whisperers, come to her chambers and just kind of check in on her because she was not at the small council meeting. So he kind of looks over at the bottle, and I assume he probably knows what it is. But regardless, he doesn't bring anything up, and he starts talking to Alicent about Viserys and Aegon and everything, and excuse me. And basically she kind of explains to him that any vision or dream that Viserys had died with him, and they kind of have to live in the present in the moment with the choices that they made and make the best out of their situation. So in turn, they kind of have like that type of conversation. And then we finally get the scene where Alicent is looking for more of like Viserys's like history books in Aegon's chambers, to which he replies that he has them removed. He did not burn them, he didn't destroy them, but he just had them removed. So after that little discussion, he obviously dismisses his king's guard, and we see him and his mother start to talk. Obviously, he's frustrated because he doesn't feel like they or the members of the small council like actually appreciate his opinion or anything that he has to offer. To in response, Allison kind of gets a little snippy and she asks Aegon if like just the fact that he's wearing the crown, if that, somehow imbues him with wisdom or, the ability to rule as king. To which Aegon like, is kind of speechless. And as Allison continues to make comments, Aegon kind of tells her to watch herself, and Allison responds by like saying, "What are you gonna do? Like, are you gonna hang me like your rat catchers?" Like at this point, you could tell that she's kind of fed up. Like she just doesn't really care, what Aegon has to say or do, which kind of emphasizes the point that nobody really respects or kind of acknowledges Aegon, as somebody who is wise and powerful, and he's basically just more like a tool to be used to kind of further everybody else's agenda. Um, so, as Aegon asks his mother what he should do, she basically just tells him to kind of like sit there, shut up, and like just do nothing and let everybody else handle his problems for him and just to learn from his much wiser and older advisors. So, obviously we see her eventually leave. And, in response, we see Aegon kind of just sitting there, drinking and just kind of sulking and not really knowing what to do. And, in response to everything that he's heard and, how he feels, he eventually just kind of throws his drink away. He smashes the vase that it was in. And he heads to the dragon pit where we actually see his dragon Sunfire for the very first time. And his dragon is obviously absolutely beautiful. And we see that they obviously have a very special bond between the two of them, which is probably one of the closest bonds that Aegon has, to be honest, in his life. And we see that he actually sets off for Rook's Rest because he wants to prove that he is capable of doing something and contributing to the war effort in his cause. Um, and this is where we kind of come full circle, and this is where we reach the third and final act of the episode, where we have the Battle of Rook's Rest. So basically, we see that after the success that Kristen Cole's been having in the Crownlands, we see a shot of him recently taking a castle and him beheading their lord, which in response, all the men of that house, which I believe is House Darkland, swear fealty, to Aegon and Team Green, and they join Kristen Cole's host. So we see that they are marching on Rook's Rest now, and we see that instead of waiting for a nighttime siege, Cole wants to do a daytime siege, as he thinks that they will be, least expecting a daytime siege out of the fear of the dragons, basically. So obviously the siege of Rook's Rest begins, and this is where we see the appearance of Rhaenys and Meleys as they are the first ones on the scene, and we see that she starts obliterating, the massive host that is currently besieging the fortress. So in response to this, obviously, we see Sir Gawain Hightower, who is Alicent's brother, basically scold Kristen Cole and say that this is exactly what he thought would happen, if they were left in this position. And in response, Cole kind of gets frustrated and he tries to like remedy the situation as best as he can. And in fact, he actually admits that this was his plan all along, as by targeting Rook's Rest and going for that fortress, they were hoping to draw out one of Team Black's dragons. And in turn, they actually have Aemond and Vhagar waiting on standby in order to take off another player and dragon basically off the chessboard, so to speak. So this was all done to basically lay a trap for Team Black and Rhaenyra, which unfortunately they fell into. Now we see that Rhaenys and Meleys have some success, in decimating and inflicting damage on the host. However, when Aemon and Cole's plan is about to be enacted, this is where we see Aegon fly over with Sunfire, and obviously we see Aemon get very frustrated with this, and instead of joining the battle right away with his brother, we see that he actually hesitates and he waits because he wants to see what exactly is going to happen. And when Kristen Cole and the Green Host also see Aegon fly over with Sunfire, again, Sir Gawain is like, "Is this was your plan? To put your king on the front lines?" And Kristen Cole says no, and you can see that obviously he's frustrated about this, but he tries to turn it to his advantage, where he basically tries to inspire the men of House Targaryen and the other houses that their king, has joined them on this battle, and the seven have blessed this day, for their host, and that victory is upon them. And in turn, he starts having the men march out, for a second attempt of basically besieging the fortress. So in turn, this is where we have one of the first proper dragon battles of the season. Oh, excuse me. Yeah, and then we see that Rhaenys and Aegon, start to face off in the sky, and obviously we see the much less experienced and trained Aegon and Sunfire basically get absolutely obliterated, by Rhaenys and Meleys, and we see that she does have the upper hand, of course, and Aegon is on the back foot, and this is where we see Aemond and Vhagar appear. Now, at first we think that, oh shit, now it's going to become a 2-on-1, what is Rhaenys going to do? And as Aegon sees his brother flying with Vhagar, he is extremely happy, and he thinks that obviously, that Aemond is, there to support his brother. But as the two dragons are basically intertwined with one another, Aemond basically tells Vhagar Dracarys, and in turn, Vhagar basically just uh, releases fire upon both the dragons, and we see that Meleys is able to turn away from it and get out relatively unscathed. But we see that Aegon and Sunfire take a lot of damage from that fire blast, and we see them eventually plummet to the ground, and they are immobilized and out of action. So in response to this, obviously Kristen Cole, tries to run over to his king to make sure he's okay. And this is where we see Rhaenys make the decision of, instead of leaving and saving herself and Meleys, that she decides to turn back and continue the battle against Aemon and Vhagar. So we see that the two of them start to face off in the sky, and we see that Rhaenys and Meleys relatively have success in the beginning as they are able to get a couple of shots into Vhagar, as they are a little bit more experienced and strategic with their battle, to the point where they actually end up slamming Aemond and Vhagar to the ground. This is where we see Kristen Cole get immobilized and knocked out for a little bit. As again, the host that they are leading basically just gets demolished under a bunch of dragon fire and just dust and the collapse of such a huge dragon like Vhagar. So we see that eventually Aemond and Vhagar are able to take to the skies once again. And in response, we see that Rhaenys and Meleys are looking for them, figuring, wondering where they went. And this is where Aemond's, is a little clever and tricky, and he launches a surprise attack by hiding under the cliffs of Rook's Rest. And unfortunately, because of the position of where they were and how they attacked, Vhagar is able to get Meleys in a chokehold, basically, with his teeth. And we see that he eventually crushes Meleys' neck, causing her to die and in turn plummet to the ground, with Rhaenys on her back. So unfortunately, we have one of the first prominent, deaths of this season. And in this episode, we have to tip our hats to the Red Queen and the Queen who never was, and mourn the loss of Rhaenys Targaryen and her dragon Meleys. So unfortunately, Aemond and Vhagar are victorious for the day. The ensuing, downfall of Meleys and Rhaenys actually breaches the walls in the castle of Rook's Rest, which in response, it looks like Sir Gawain Hightower was able to kind of rally the host and lead them into the breach. So we could see that Team Green obviously won that day and won the Battle of Rook's Rest. If you want to call it a victory, it was definitely more of a Pithric victory if we're looking at it strategically. And we see that Aemond and Vhagar, make their way towards Aegon and Sunfire as Kristen Cole regains consciousness and does the same thing. And we see that, Kristen Cole makes it to Aegon and Sunfire as he watches Aemond to basically step up with his sword unsheathed, kind of giving Cole the impression that, Aemon might be trying to kill the king and put him out of his misery before anybody sees. But at the same time, it looks like he was putting it away. So, we don't exactly know what Aemon's intentions were there. Obviously, there's speculation on whether or not Aemon's meant to burn Aegon and Sunfire in the battle. I mean, this is where we're kind of talking about how the show is maybe doing things a little bit differently from the books, as in the books, it's definitely meant to seem more of like a 2v1. But in the show, it definitely kind of seems like two smaller individual battles versus a 2v1. So there definitely is some speculation about Aemond and, where his loyalty exactly lies or what his intentions were. Um, Now, as we get a closer shot of Sunfire and Aegon, we can see that Sunfire is still alive, but obviously critically injured. And we do not know what Aegon's condition is as we see them laying there, but we don't exactly know if he's alive or not because he took a lot of damage. And that's basically where the episode ends, to be honest. It basically ends with, Aemond's walking away, with the Valyrian steel dagger that Aegon was carrying. And it shows kind of Kristen Cole on his knees, kind of just realizing exactly what happened. And I assume probably him feeling really bad and ashamed and guilty. Um, so yeah, I mean, that's basically how the episode ends. So it was obviously a very heavy episode. Like I said, it was really a shame to lose Rhaenys and Meleys, unfortunately. They definitely will be missed. Um, and yeah, I mean, I think they did the Battle of Rook's Rest beautifully. And it was a great send off, for the Queen who never was, basically. But yeah, that is going to do it for our episode today. My voice is getting nice and hoarse, so I think this is a great place to stop. So again, as I said in the beginning of the episode, I would definitely give this episode a solid 10 out of 10 suns. I thought it was absolutely phenomenal. And yeah, I'm looking forward to discussing uh, episode 5 with you guys when I get that review out. So this episode will definitely be out for you guys next week. So you will have this week off again at the time of this recording. Um, there will be no episode presently to watch, but when it comes Monday, you guys will have a brand new episode of Two Sons Podcast to watch and enjoy for that week, as I continue to get the other episodes together and put them out. So again, all we ask for is your patience and your support, as we get these episodes out, and we do the best we can, obviously. So we really hope that you guys enjoy this episode as I dive into episode 4 of House of the Dragon. And yeah, just kind of talk about my thoughts and feelings and how I enjoyed the episode basically. So if you're wondering where you could find out, information about our podcast, Two Sons Podcast, and when these episodes are released, you can follow us on Instagram, X, formerly known as Twitter, and Facebook, all under Two Sons Podcast. That is with an O, not a U, because we are two brothers. You could also find us on TikTok at Two Sons YouTube, and you can find us on Spotify and YouTube, all under Two Sons Podcast. Again, that is with an O, not a U, because we are two brothers. So you can find us there for your viewing and listening pleasure, and on the socials for when the episodes are being posted. So if any of you follow me on my personal accounts, you know that I post them on my personal accounts as well. But I usually do post the TikTok as well when these episodes drop in air. So just like I said, follow us on those socials, stay up to date, and it will let you know when the episode drops. But with that being said, guys, that is all for me today. So again, thank you for coming out to another wonderful episode where we talked about House of the Dragon. So like I said, follow us on those socials at Two Sons Podcast and Two Sons YouTube. This episode will be posted on Monday for you guys on YouTube and then hopefully on Spotify as well. So be on the lookout for that. And until we speak to each other again and see each other again, I hope everybody has a great day, great afternoon, great evening, and a great night. By the time of this recording, it's about Thursday, so hopefully everybody has a wonderful weekend. Um, and yeah, please be safe. Do not do anything stupid. Please stay hydrated because it's really hot. At least down here in Florida, it's super hot. So stay hydrated, stay cool, and yeah, I will see you all in the next one. Goodbye for now.